Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive with us. Today, we're going to be looking at this idea of really intense love.
Intense.
Yeah, really, really deeply, truly loving. And I'm not talking about just sort of your average
Puppy love.
puppy love. Yeah, or even just like, the
Comfortable love.
yeah,
No.
just like, oh yeah, I love my parents, I love my kids, I love my
Right.
partner, whatever. We're talking about something much deeper.
Deeper. Yeah.
And the author that we're looking at today is Michael Lukens, and he suggests there's this whole other level of love that's so powerful that it can completely change your life
Absolutely.
and even like impact the people around you just by like the intensity of it.
Yeah. And he actually calls this committed benevolent interest.
Okay.
Or CBI for short. It's what's interesting is that he doesn't see it as just like this fleeting feeling, you get the warm fuzzies and then it goes away. He sees it as like a state of being.
Okay.
A conscious choice you make.
So you're telling me that we can choose to love that intensely?
He believes so.
That sounds like
It's a big claim.
a tall order. Yeah, like I mean,
Right.
is that even possible? Like what leads him to believe that this is even something that we can do?
Well, his theory comes from his own life experiences. He talks about meeting his wife and the births of his sons.
Okay.
And these were like moments that he says were so profoundly moving, they like defied all expectations.
Oh, wow.
And there's this phrase that he uses that I really like. It's violates your expectations to the upside,
Oh, okay.
which I think really captures that sense of like overwhelming awe and joy.
Okay. I can see how those would be like incredibly powerful moments.
Yeah.
But does he think that everyone can have these like expectations violated kind of experiences?
He does. He believes that everyone is capable of experiencing this level of love. But we often get in our own way.
Okay.
He argues that there's this thing that he calls the permission to invalidate that blocks us from tapping into this deeper well of love.
Permission to invalidate. I've never heard that phrase before. What does he mean by that?
He's talking about this defense mechanism, something we develop, often subconsciously, to like protect ourselves from getting hurt.
Right.
It's like we give ourselves permission to put ourselves and others down, to focus on the negative, to always feel superior.
Okay.
And, this negativity, Lukens argues, is like the biggest obstacle to experiencing CBI.
That makes sense. If you're constantly putting yourself or others down, it's hard to imagine being open to that kind of like intense positive connection.
Exactly.
So how do you stop giving yourself this permission?
So Lukens believes that the first step is to become aware of it.
Okay.
We have to identify when we're invalidating. Are we constantly criticizing our partner? Do we brush off compliments? Do we refuse help because we think we know better?
Right.
He says we need to trace these behaviors back to their roots.
Okay.
To understand why we started invalidating in the first place.
So it's about understanding those deep-seated patterns and where they came from. But then what? How do you actually switch from invalidating to embracing this committed benevolent interest?
This is where Lukens gets really radical.
Okay.
He calls for a committed veto of this ingrained permission to invalidate.
Okay.
So basically what he's saying is we have to consciously choose to stop this pattern of negativity dead in its tracks.
That sounds like a tall order.
Yeah.
How can you just decide to stop a behavior that's probably so deeply ingrained? Can it really be that simple?
Well, he doesn't claim it's easy.
Okay.
Remember, he sees CBI as a choice, a commitment.
Okay.
And just like any commitment,
Right.
it takes effort and dedication.
Right.
He suggests we actively look for the good in ourselves and others,
Okay.
challenge our cynical thoughts and practice being more open and receptive.
Starting to sound a little bit like, those self-help gurus who tell you to just like,
Think positive.
think positive thoughts and everything will be great. Is there more to it than just like changing your mindset?
Oh, there is. Lukens believes that by overriding this permission to invalidate, we open ourselves up to a whole new way of experiencing the world.
Okay.
And that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, tell me more about this new way of experiencing the world. What does that even look like?
So imagine a life where you're no longer limited by negativity and judgment.
Okay.
Lukens suggests that when you break free from those constraints, you tap into a level of love that's so powerful.
Wait, hold on. Before you go on, I have a question. You keep mentioning this incredible intensity of CBI.
Yeah.
And Lukens even says that it can be scary to people.
Yeah.
Why would that be?
That's a great question, and it really gets to the heart of what makes Lukens' theory so fascinating.
Okay.
He believes that this kind of unrestrained, genuine love can be unsettling
Okay.
because it challenges our preconceived notions of how we're supposed to behave and interact with the world.
So it's not just about, like, feeling good.
No.
It's about a fundamental shift in how you relate to everything and everyone around you.
Exactly. And that can be intimidating for some people,
Yeah.
both for the person experiencing it and for those on the receiving end.
Okay.
It forces us to confront our own insecurities and the limitations we've placed on ourselves.
Wow.
It's like holding up a mirror to the world and saying,
Look what's possible.
look, this is what's possible.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to what you were saying before I interrupted.
Sure.
What happens when you tap into this level of love? What does that look like in practice?
Well, Lukens believes that this kind of radical love allows you to connect with people on a much deeper level.
Okay.
He suggests that when you're free from judgment and negativity, you can really see people for who they are, appreciate their strengths, and empathize with their struggles.
So it's not just about, like, feeling good yourself.
No.
It's actually about, like, improving your relationships with others.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It enhances connection.
That's interesting. But I think some people might be thinking, well, wait, isn't it healthy to have some boundaries?
Sure.
Like, doesn't self-preservation require a little bit of cynicism?
That's a valid point.
Yeah.
Lukens isn't advocating for naivete or blind acceptance.
Okay.
He emphasizes that CBI isn't about ignoring red flags or
Yeah.
letting people walk all over you.
Right.
It's about approaching relationships with this genuine desire to understand and connect, even when it's difficult.
Okay. So it's almost like he's describing a more evolved way of interacting with each other.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
Okay. But how does that actually work in practice?
Right.
Like, how do you balance this deep love with real-world challenges and conflicts?
Well, Lukens believes that CBI actually equips you to better navigate those challenges.
Okay.
He suggests that when you approach conflict from a place of love and understanding, you're more likely to find solutions that work for everyone involved.
That sounds great in theory,
Yeah.
but I'm wondering about the practical side of things. For instance, like, how does this apply to dealing with difficult people?
Okay.
You know, like someone who's constantly negative or manipulative.
Lukens doesn't shy away from those tough questions.
Okay.
He acknowledges that there will always be people who challenge our capacity for love.
Right.
But he suggests that even in those situations, we can choose to engage with them from a place of compassion and understanding.
That doesn't mean you have to become best friends with them
Right.
or condone their behavior.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing their humanity,
Okay.
even when their actions are hurtful. It's about understanding that their behavior is often driven by their own pain and insecurities.
So instead of getting caught up in that, like, cycle of negativity,
Right.
you're choosing to, like, see the bigger picture,
Yeah.
the human story behind their actions.
Exactly.
But wouldn't that require a lot of emotional energy and resilience?
It does, and Lukens doesn't sugarcoat that. He acknowledges that practicing CBI is a continual process of self-awareness and growth.
Okay.
He suggests that it requires us to confront our own shadows, to understand our own triggers and biases.
So it's not just about loving others?
No.
It's also about loving yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Lukens argues that you can't truly love others until you learn to love and accept yourself, flaws and all.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But how does all of this tie back to the permission to invalidate that we were talking about earlier?
It's all connected.
Okay.
Lukens sees overcoming that permission as essential to experiencing the full potential of CBI.
Okay.
He suggests that when we stop invalidating ourselves and others, we create space for genuine connection and compassion.
Okay.
We become more receptive to love, both giving and receiving.
And this brings us back to his vision of a world transformed by love.
Right.
It sounds a bit utopian,
Yeah.
but there's something compelling about the idea, isn't there? But even if we, like, buy into the idea, isn't it a bit idealistic to think that we can actually achieve this level of love on a large scale?
It's definitely a bold vision.
Yeah.
But Lukens isn't suggesting that it's easy
Right.
or that it will happen overnight.
Okay.
He believes that it requires a conscious effort, a willingness to challenge our ingrained habits,
Okay.
and embrace a new way of being.
So it's not just about individuals transforming.
Yeah.
It's about a collective shift in consciousness.
Yes, and Lukens sees that shift happening gradually
Okay.
through small acts of love and kindness rippling outward.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about the power of these individual transformations to inspire others and create a more compassionate and interconnected world.
It's interesting that he ties his ideas to other thinkers and traditions as well,
Yeah.
like the Gottman's research on relationships
Yeah.
and Rumi's teachings on love.
Right. He sees his work as building upon these existing frameworks.
Okay.
He highlights the Gottman's work on the destructive power of contempt in relationships.
Which aligns perfectly with his call to override the permission to invalidate.
Right.
He also draws parallels to Rumi's emphasis on removing the barriers we build against love,
Yeah.
which resonates with his vision of a world transformed by CBI.
It's like he's drawing on all these diverse perspectives
Yeah.
to create this roadmap for a more loving and connected future.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes his work so fascinating. It's
Yeah.
both aspirational,
Yeah.
but it's also grounded in these practical insights.
Exactly.
He doesn't just present a lofty ideal.
Right, yeah.
He offers concrete steps that we can take to cultivate this kind of love in our own lives.
He does.
And he even ends his talk with a challenge.
Well, he does.
Yeah.
He encourages us to make a New Year's resolution to actively override the permission
Yeah.
to invalidate.
It's like he's saying, put it to the test.
Yeah.
See what happens when you commit to choosing love over negativity.
Exactly.
That's a pretty compelling call to action.